I let a guy touch me too low during karaoke. He took the mic and exposed me. It's crazy how one minute you have your life in the perfect order and that you know that there was nothing that could distort it, only to be wrong the next minute. Everything in my life had come stumbling down that day. One minute I was dancing with a different guy, not my boyfriend whom we've been together for 5 years now. Another guy who I didn't even know his name. I had done it to make my boyfriend Nathan jealous. He had upset me. The way he kept behaving in the last few days, like I was the one forcing myself on him, and that he didn't love me anymore. He barely even spoke to me around the house, and that night that we had gone out for karaoke night, I decided to let him know just how wanted and sexy I am to others. It was just to make him jealous and make him realize that I was important to him. It was just supposed to be a harmless dance. But what started as a harmless dance to get my boyfriend jealous escalated quickly. He wasn't grabbing my waist anymore, but my ass, and then his hand was wandering underneath my short dress, and instead of slapping it off, I let him touch me too low, thinking it was for fun. But what happened next had just shocked me, because Nathan took the mic and he just exposed me. Nathan and I met in college, and we dated through school and eventually when we finished. I met him at the book club I decided to join to build up my grades. I had a crush on Nathan then, but he had a girlfriend at the time we met and almost never noticed me, despite my efforts to make him see me. I made myself a constant figure in his life by always appearing in places I knew he'd be. I knew his class schedule by heart because I took a picture of it when he wasn't looking. I knew his other interests and I joined whatever club he was in, even if I had no clue what they did in a scientist club. Call me a stalker, but it did eventually pay off. Nathan started noticing me after a month of constantly putting myself in his path. We became friends, and I made myself into someone he could actually talk to anytime he needed to. Luckily for me, his girlfriend started acting up and he was frustrated about it. She was jealous he was spending too much time with me, and she wasn't exactly making her jealousy pretty. Nathan had eventually ended things with her when she embarrassed him publicly by trying to beat me up in public because I was sitting too close to Nathan. I was so happy and didn't even mind that I lost a few hairs. My devotion to the process finally paid off, and Nathan was single again. It took months before Nathan finally asked me out after he ended things with his girlfriend. It was obvious he loved her deeply, but I didn't mind the wait. I even offered my body as a tool to help forget her, and Nathan kept refusing until that very night when he had gotten drunk because his friend thought of it as a good idea to slip some weird drug into his drink at a party. I was the one who took him home, and I took advantage of that fact by stripping Nathan too. He was too drunk to even sleep with me, but I made it look like that the next morning. And after that day, Nathan, believing we had sex, started allowing me to sleep over in his room, and finally started having sex with me just like I had always wanted. I was so happy, and automatically to me, I was his girlfriend. He didn't need to ask me out or anything. Sleeping together for me meant we were finally together, and I made sure everyone knew that because I staked my claim. Nathan didn't say anything or complain about it whenever I introduced myself as his girlfriend in public, so I just left things at that. I finally had the man of my dreams, and it was amazing for me. I gave all of these explanations so you'd understand why I felt I was always the one throwing myself at Nathan all the time. Over the years, the feeling never went away, even though Nathan never cheated on me. When we finished college, he allowed me to move in with him. Although he finished a year before I did and got a job immediately, but I started living with him before I even graduated at all, despite the fact that my parents paid for my dorm room, and they didn't know I was in a guy's room and warming his bed instead of the place they paid for. I love Nathan so much, and I would do anything for him, including sleeping with other men so he would just notice me. Actually, just 2 of them. I slept with 2 different men just so Nathan would pay attention to me. Even though he hadn't known at the time that I was doing such, I was desperate to grab his attention. It didn't feel like he was giving me 100% of it. It felt like I was the only one invested in the relationship. Immediately, I left school and stayed with Nathan. I refused every attempt to get a job. To Nathan, I was going for every interview I got called up for, and I was trying desperately to get a job. But the truth was, I wasn't because I didn't want a job. Staying at home and waiting for Nathan to come back from work so I could give him a good loving was the highlight of my day. I loved pretending like we were married and I was a housewife expecting her husband. I took his coat and bag, would prepare him a bath, and have his food served when he came down to eat. After he was done eating, I would offer a massage, and in the new sexy lingerie I bought every time try to seduce Nathan, which always worked. I loved it when he wouldn't be able to figure out how exactly to pull it off, and eventually end up tearing the flimsy dress from my body. It made me so turned on, and I kept buying clothes that were so complicated, it always took me a while to figure out how to even put them on. It was like my fetish. I was obsessed with Nathan, and I think he knew that, and was trying to help me tone it down a little. He even got me a job so I could get distracted. He probably felt that if I had some other thing to do rather than be a pretend housewife, I would be able to adjust my obsession. But I didn't agree with it, and I made myself get fired within a week. But Nathan didn't even know that. He thought I went to work each day and only came back before him every day. And that was probably because he dropped me off every morning in front of the company I was supposed to be working for. But eventually Nathan found out and was really pissed about it. I was so scared when he refused to come home for 2 whole days. That was the first time I cheated on Nathan. Worrying and desperately wanting to find Nathan and having no idea where he was. The company where he worked at never allowed guests in unless you had an appointment, one which Nathan would not give me. I texted him repeatedly and called too, but Nathan wouldn't respond. I was so scared that he was going to leave me, and I just got really desperate. I needed a means of escape from worrying all day and night about Nathan. So I let myself out that first night into a club with the intention of just drinking away my sorrow and drinking to stupor. But then one guy noticed me sitting alone and ordering drinks, and he approached me and even sat beside me without permission. I paid no attention to him at first, but he kept talking to me and then trying to put his hand on me. I was very annoyed at first, but then a ridiculous idea just popped into my head. Sex had always been a stress reliever for Nathan, and I always liked relieving his stress. Nathan wasn't there to relieve my stress, and he was even the cause of the said stress, so I decided to use the stranger, who I cannot remember his name, to my advantage. I suggested a one-night stand, and he agreed instantly. It was obviously something he wanted all night when he sat beside me and kept looking at me like some juicy juice box for kids. I didn't want to go anywhere else. I didn't want to take the long route to the hotel, which was just a 10-minute walk, and even less than that with a car which the stranger had offered to take me in. But I refused. I knew if I left that club, I would probably just go home and continue worrying about Nathan. And I thought he probably didn't want me as much as I did him. He didn't care because he wouldn't have left me hanging like that, even though I did something offensive. So my revenge plot was to sleep with another man, hoping to punish him mentally for making me unhappy. The stranger, seeing how unwilling I was to go to any other places, suggested the club's bathroom, and I agreed. It was a small space, and I didn't know how one could possibly have sex in it, but we made it work. I mean, the stranger did when he pushed me and bent me over the sink and proceeded to push up my short dress and tear out my panties out of urgency. I let him do whatever he wanted and just stared at him through the bathroom broken mirror, and he slammed into me from behind. Even at that moment, sleeping with another man, all I could think of was Nathan. How Nathan would never disrespect me so much as not to mind that my hands were hurting from grabbing the sink too much in an attempt to hold myself from falling off from the aggressive way he was going on from behind. He wouldn't kiss my hair from behind and thank me for the great talk, and just leave like that, leaving me to gather my panty or what was left of it, and proceed to limp out of the bathroom because of the soreness I had between my legs. After that day, I promised myself never to seek out another man, because I couldn't get mine to see me. Nathan showed up after 2 days, and he was very apologetic towards me. He apologized for leaving like that, and explained that he had planned to come back home that evening after cooling off. But he got a work emergency, and had to go out of the stage for it. He explained that he didn't even have time for himself, because of how busy he had gotten, and therefore he couldn't reply to my texts or answer my calls. He told me he came back home as soon as he came back into town, despite needing to go to the office to report his findings. I was relieved that he didn't just abandon me because I had done the wrong thing. He was actually busy, and true to his words, Nathan got a call asking him to come to work to give his report, and he left right after promising we would talk when he came back. And that had brought on the guilt that plagues my mind from having cheated, because I felt I was unimportant to Nathan. Nathan stayed true to his words, and when he did come back, he asked for my reasons for quitting the job, and explained his reasons for wanting me to work too. I understood him, and I knew he was being reasonable, but I still wasn't ready to work, so I told Nathan to give me a few days to think properly about what I wanted to do. I eventually chose to sell things online to people. It was my easiest solution. I could work, but then I would be working from home, and I didn't have to move except I had a delivery, and I would still be home to take care of Nathan. Nathan wasn't exactly pleased with my conclusion, but he accepted it and even gave me the capital to start off. My business was failing after 3 months, but I tried to hide it from Nathan. I was too busy trying to find new ways to make myself indispensable to Nathan, rather than building up my business. I had lost all the capital Nathan gave me to a scamming website. It was because I saw the things I usually bought for huge prices for half their prices, and I was greedy. If I bought it at those prices and still sold them at the usual prices I did, I would be earning a lot of money, and so I bought a lot of things and paid for it. Well, as you can already assume, the products never came, and I got blocked off after I sent the payment. I couldn't report it to the police because I didn't want Nathan finding out about it, and I knew they could do nothing about it since it was an online fraud and not physically. I should have known that the site wasn't a certified one, but I just ignored my brain's warning and went with my mind instead. I had to get the money back one way or the other because Nathan was starting to ask questions why I wasn't getting any orders, particularly on weekends, when people usually bought the most since they were usually at home on those days and could stay in and wait for their products to arrive. So I borrowed some money from a loan shark just to invest in the business. But in my attempt to double the money when I got an interesting offer, I lost all the money I borrowed too. I was neck deep in debt, but I didn't want Nathan finding out because I was scared of his reaction. But then Nathan had eventually found out I lost all the money to a scamming website. He didn't even know about the loans I took out to return the money yet, and he was so livid. It was only then I found out that Nathan had taken a huge chunk out of his savings that he was making to buy us a house so we could get married and move into a bigger space in readiness for kids. He had even borrowed some money from the office when I complained that the money wasn't enough to get the basic things I needed. I felt really horrible, especially because Nathan left the house that day again. But this time I knew he was going home because he texted me and told me he was visiting his parents and that I shouldn't come because he needed some space to think. I felt so bad and guilty, and I had broken my promise to myself again, seeking out the solitude that drinks and sex offered when my mind kept turning like on the circle of wheels. This time, I didn't wait until a guy found me. I picked rather randomly, and he was more than willing to have sex with me anywhere I chose. I had chosen the comfort of a bed space at the hotel this time because I didn't want to risk ending up slamming my head into the already broken mirror. The stranger, who I found out eventually to be Nick, had been quite skillful with his hands and mouth. I even ended up forgetting Nathan and my needs for him for the whole 1 hour while we were having mindless sex. It was just so wild and exciting. So much that I had gone back to the club the next day when Nathan still wouldn't show up to seek him out. He had, of course, been at the club because, according to him, having fun was one reason he still lived. We had a repeat session of the previous day, and it left me again in a state of euphoria. Nathan ended up spending 3 days at his parents' place, and I also ended up spending those 3 nights in Nick's arms at that hotel. The crazy thing was, even after Nathan came back and was more calm and willing to discuss the way forward as I had desperately hoped for before, I couldn't stop wanting Nick's touch. Suddenly, Nathan's touch wasn't enough. He didn't know to hit the right spots, and I just wanted some good sex. More specifically, Nick's type of good sex. I tried, though, to stay away from the club. I wanted to be good for Nathan. I wanted to remain on his good side, but I couldn't stop thinking about Nick, and especially when he did those things he always did with his tongue inside me. So after 3 days of trying hard to stay calm, I found myself seeking out Nick again. He was pleased to see me and proceeded to show me just how much inside the club that night. This time, I didn't mind that my head was touching the broken mirror in front. All that mattered was the euphoric feelings I was having from what he was doing to me. Then seeing Nick became a routine. We had a set time and date we met, and it was like twice in a week, sometimes 4, depending on how I was feeling from having to struggle with my obsession with Nathan. We even got each other's numbers, and it was just the most erotic thing to do. Nick made sure to keep me high and expectant of the things he would do to me when we met, with his naughty texts and the nudes of himself that he would send me. He even went as far as sending me some porn to watch just to make everything more exciting. It was pretty much heavy for me, and I just couldn't stop what I was doing with Nick. But I guess I had gone and overdone it because Nathan found out, perhaps from the way I kept sneaking around the house with my phone in hand. Or it was from the way I stopped pestering him for everyday sex. Or maybe it was because I changed my password so he wouldn't get access to the texts between Nick and I. I remember the look of surprise on his face when he was trying to get the contact of a mutual friend on my phone, and he had picked it up and tried my usual password and it hadn't gone through. I remember quickly snatching my phone out of his hand and quickly typing in the password, and instead of giving it back to him, I called out the number to him. He must have first started to notice those little changes in me and decided to investigate. Because how on earth had he managed to know all that and had said so that horrible night during karaoke with our friends? Our friends had decided that we needed to have a reunion and had decided to set up a date and time that was convenient for everyone. We were supposed to meet at a restaurant, all 5 of us. 3 guys excluding Nathan and 2 girls. I shopped for the perfect dress 2 days before the meeting. I wanted to show the girls just how well I had been. We were never really friends. They were just friends that stayed my friends just so we could secretly envy each other, and I hadn't spoken to them in a long time. So I wanted them to see that I was doing well for myself, even with a failed business and a huge debt that kept growing because of my inconsistent payment. The night was supposed to be perfect. They were supposed to see Nathan and I together and envy us. They were supposed to realize that they were wrong for teasing me and mocking me back in school, telling me that Nathan will probably never end up with me. I wanted them to see what it was like to have a stable relationship that would have become a marriage if I hadn't decided to do business and then proceeded to lose all the money. I didn't expect the night to turn out as it eventually had, and I was just really devastated afterwards. Everything started out well. We met at the already booked restaurant and we all greeted each other, the girls and I with fake kisses and the guys with handshakes. We ordered our food as soon as we got there, but instead of eating, Nathan just sipped his wine and said nothing except he was spoken to. They talked about our relationship and how Nathan and I had been together since college. Every one of them were all just surprised that Nathan and I were still together after all those years and kept teasing us about it. I laughed and waved aside their teasing even though I secretly enjoyed it, but Nathan, on the other hand, had done the opposite. He just sat there sipping his drink and saying nothing. And when I wrapped my hand around his arm just to show some affection as if to convince everyone that we loved each other, Nathan had disentangled my hand from his arm and instead decided to make some conversation about work with the guys. If the guys noticed, they pretended well not to, but I saw the girls hitting each other's arms and making weird noises with their throat. I felt really embarrassed, especially knowing that the girls were still friends with Nathan's ex, so they definitely had some juicy details to bring to her that night. I didn't know how to redeem myself, and everything just got awkward fast enough, until one of us had suggested that we leave the restaurant and go to karaoke, and we all agreed, hoping that singing and dancing to our old favorite songs back in college was enough to alleviate the sudden tension. While everyone danced and sang and laughed at each other's terrible imitation of the song, Nathan just still sat very quietly and did nothing but watched. I was getting more and more annoyed with his behavior by the minute, and I just watched him. Then, desperately needing something to distract me, I stood up and started dancing with everybody else. Everyone already had a partner as they sang and danced, clearly already intoxicated by the drinks they had with them. Even the girls had picked some partner in the crowd and were dancing with them. The place was packed with people, especially that night, and it was just so fun. Or not. Trying to dance all by myself wasn't exactly nice, and I was glad I got a partner who suddenly pulled me to himself and started grinding his already obvious erection into my back. I didn't mind because it meant I got a dancing partner and wasn't being an awkward dancer, and I also got a ridiculous idea again right there with the stranger dancing with me, so I made sure I pushed my ass into the stranger well enough so that Nathan could see me. I wanted to make him jealous. I wanted him to stand up and push the stranger away and take his stead. I wanted him to just help me take away that sense of fear that he wasn't into me anymore. So I continued dancing with the stranger seductively, and the stranger had seen that as an opportunity to drive his hand lower all the way down my dress to the front, and then rid up my dress, which was already short a little, and touch me down there. I wasn't wearing any panties, so it gave him easy access to my naked under. While he did what he did with his hands, all I could remember was Nick and how he usually was able to help me forget my obsession with Nathan, so I allowed the stranger without saying anything. I let him do what he wanted while still slowly moving to the music. What I didn't know was that Nathan had seen what the stranger was doing, or that he was making a video of it. What I didn't know was that Nathan was watching me not only bring into the stranger, but allow him to touch me intimately like that in public, not minding that my boyfriend was sitting across the room. I didn't even know he could see us. All I wanted for him to see was the dance. He was supposed to see just the dance and get jealous. He wasn't supposed to see the other part that was happening right there. I felt like he wouldn't even be able to see us even if he tried, because the room was filled with lights, but they were extremely dim. So it really wasn't possible to see what the other person was doing, particularly in their lower half. But apparently I was so wrong, because one minute I had the stranger hands up in my dress, and then the next minute, the music stopped and Nathan was going up on stage with a mic in his hand and a stiff expression on his face. At first I thought I won. I thought maybe he was finally jealous and had decided to make some announcement of some sort. I thought maybe he was planning to ask me to marry him in front of all those strangers and our friends. But the stiff and angry expression on his face convinced me otherwise, and I found myself getting really scared. Nathan had gotten to that stage and turned to face everyone, me in particular. By then, the room had been flooded with the normal bright light, probably because Nathan had requested for it. And then he brought the mic to his lips and just started destroying my life within seconds. He told everyone how he's been dating me for 5 years, and how I had done nothing but squandered money and also cheated. He told everyone that I even had the guts to cheat right there with him in the room. And then he signaled the DJ who had projected the video Nathan had taken of me letting the stranger's hand wander underneath my dress on the screen, where minutes ago it had only been lyrics of songs that was being projected. I didn't even know he had gotten up and talked to the DJ about projecting that horrible video. I was so caught up in the moment I hadn't realized anything else. The video clearly showed the stranger doing things to me, and there was no doubt that I was the one in the video with my extremely short and flashy red dress. And after exposing my sins to the world, Nathan had told me he was done with me and he never wanted to see me again, and then he just left. I wanted to follow him out to try and beg him, but my legs wouldn't even cooperate with my brain. I couldn't get myself to move no matter how much I tried. I just stood there staring in shock at everyone. The stranger was quick to surrender, telling everyone and anyone that cared to listen that it was all my fault, that I allowed him to touch me that way without objecting, and that he didn't even know I was there with someone, and then he was quick to run and leave the place. I was left alone with the consequences of my actions staring right at me in the faces of more than 50 people. I couldn't move. I was so scared as people stared at me and murmured their disgust. It was only when I saw a flashlight somewhere in the crowd that I realized I was being snapped and recorded, so I fled from the place that night and went home. Well, I ended up sleeping outside in the cold because Nathan wouldn't open the door for me no matter how much I begged. The next morning, it was the estate security guard that had taken me away because he said the neighbors kept calling to complain about my loud cries in the night. That evening, knowing that Nathan would be back from work and would be at home, I went back again to beg for forgiveness, but I met my bags outside instead, and I could literally feel my life seeping through my eyes in the form of tears. I kept calling and texting Nathan, but he wouldn't respond to any of them. He wouldn't let me in his house, and after 3 days of constantly going back, the security guard banned me from coming again because of the complaint from the neighbors, and also one from the tenant of the house, Nathan. He was making it obviously clear that he wanted nothing to do with me anymore, and he was going the extra mile to make sure I knew that. My social life was also becoming a pretty bad disaster too. Everyone knew about the girl who cheated on her 5-year relationship during a karaoke night. The video out there for the world to see. I have become an object of ridicule, and I cannot say it doesn't hurt. What hurts more is not being able to be with Nathan, or the thought of him never forgiving me for all the horrible things I've done. Update. Hello, Reddits. It's been a few months since my last post here, and I know that despite not knowing much about me, you guys don't really care enough to see that I'm back again posting another thing. Don't worry, this is probably my last post here. I just wanted to let out pent-up emotions. Having to have spent the last months in agony that only seems to increase instead of reduce has been torture. So has having no one to talk to. I never knew the meaning of loneliness until this very day, and I can say it's just a terrible feeling this way. Especially knowing that everything had been your fault, and that you could have definitely done better. It hurts knowing that my reasons for cheating weren't just excuses. I just was a lying and cheating girlfriend who had no reason whatever to do the things that she did, but she had still done them. My mind keeps flashing back to that night, and I keep having nightmares about it. How Nathan had stared at me as he exposed me. The way his eyes, which had always been full of love and respect for me, just changed into those cold ones with no regard for me anymore. I remember the way he had watched me with hooded eyes days before that karaoke. If I hadn't been too stuck up in my ways, I would have known that. I claimed to be obsessed with him, and yet was still able to let different men touch me in ways that were both disappointing and ridiculous. I managed to convince myself that I was doing the right thing, even though I knew that I was wrong, and that the consequences would be dire if Nathan ever found out. And when he did find out, the consequences had indeed been dire. I cannot stop wishing that I had taken the right steps with Nathan. I cannot stop wishing that I could desperately turn back the hands of time to the first time I cheated on Nathan so I could undo it. Even though I know that my wishes are all but words, they will never become reality. Not ever. I lost that chance. I lost the chance to redo things when I allowed other men, not just one, to touch me that way. It's funny how none of them are in the picture. Nick, whom I had slept with countless times, had blocked me off. No calls or anything. He doesn't even care about me. The stranger I met at the karaoke night had gone online and all but called me a whore when I allowed him to touch me that way when I had my boyfriend in the same room. Nobody was paying attention to him, though. Not the way they were doing to me. I've been slandered so many times now, it has started to feel like a normal thing. I know I came here with little expectations and hope that I could perhaps get a solution to my problem, but all I've gotten so far is the same response as the people online who know nothing about me have given. It's quite painful because I thought maybe explaining the whole thing would get some sort of help or sympathy, but I got nothing. I know I don't deserve it. I know I deserve worse. I know that my life will never remain the same. Even after the insults and backlash dies down here and on the internet, I know that I will never again regain everything I've lost, especially not Nathan. He's showing me just how much he wants me to suffer by ignoring me this much. I have texted and called so many times, and yet he wouldn't respond. He reads my texts, I know he does, and he sees my calls, but he just ignores them, making this whole process so painful. It's killing. Knowing that I will never get a chance to right my wrongs, knowing that Nathan will never be mine again, not in a million years, knowing that he will definitely move on with someone that isn't me, knowing that I will never stop feeling this way, this horrible pain that seems permanently lodged in my heart and brain. Knowing all of these still doesn't make it easy to accept my loss. It's so terrible wishing so desperately for something that you know will never happen. My friends, my family, and everyone I've ever known have all deserted me. My parents don't even want to see me anymore. Apparently they don't want my evil rubbing off my younger siblings, and so I was banned from ever showing my face around them. I have no friends other than the fake ones I used to have, but even they cannot fake or disguise their disgust for me. Even this popularity, however negative, still isn't able to make me feel better. I'm so lonely. It hurts so much. This emptiness that is now my life hurts really badly. It doesn't help that the work I refused to do back then, I have to do double now, with the loan sharks tracking me down every now and then and threatening body harm if I didn't pay up, and the interest just keeps growing ridiculously, but I do not even have a choice but to do it because I had laid my bed, and regardless of the fact that it's full of hard pebbles and nails, I have to lay in it, sadly. Goodbye, guys.